Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Daniel Rodriguez, aka Big D88091, and welcome to my review for Shadow of the Tomb Raider, where we find Lara Croft trying to stop the apocalypse, and of course raid a few tombs. As usually, I'll start with my pros, cons, and then final score. First off, ever since 2013's rebooted Tomb Raider, the franchise has had great graphics, which has always been improving with each installment, and with Shadow, there's no disappointment. It's great graphics, great draw distance and environments. The cutscenes and motion capture are at its best. Lara's evolution throughout these games has been a treat to see. Camilla Luddington does a great job with Laura's voice acting. This for a third time around. Her acting has gotten way better over time. Lara has at least more range and emotion in here, comedic, being more funny than a little bit of seriousness, etc., than the other previous installments where she was about as cold as a stone. She really didn't have much of a smile. At least in here, there's more of a smile. And the other characters have good voice acting as well. Some not as solid as Lara's and Jonah. You can actually explore tombs this time around. Now, you could in the previous installments, but these are actually more detailed, more in depth, bigger, and better. They're not hard to find. The puzzles were really fun, and the collectibles in the tombs are interesting to read. If you're into all those sort of collectibles and reading each and every one, and kind of following the story in which they give. Some were super easy to solve, others were more of a challenge, so there's a good range with the tomb exploring and puzzles. And then you have the crypts, which were fun to explore, filled with traps, giving you different boots or clothes to wear, while the tombs give you certain perks. The size of the story has been turned up a notch. The apocalypse is on the horizon. Lara must stop it. She must beat Trinity to this ancient object and restore the sun. For me, this was the best story out of the trilogy. The QuickTime events were super fun, putting Lara in uncomfortable disaster moments. The majority of this game is set in tribal land, so Lara has an option to wear tribal clothing, which I was surprised and happy of the variety of clothes that Lara can wear. The stealth gameplay is really fun in here. You can now cover yourself in mud and blend into certain areas. I absolutely love that. Majority of the game you find yourself in stealth mode, killing in the shadows, if you will. And then more of the gunfights are kind of a rarity in this game. Which the gunfights are fun as well, but for me, I really prefer the stealth over a firefight. Last but not least, for the pros, the upgrading of the weapons, finding resources in order to upgrade your bow and guns, which is a very easy task to do. But I enjoyed the upgrades for the bow, which you use 85% of the game, and the guns not so much, but all the upgrades just make you OP. Lara's unstoppable with the upgrades. Now moving on to the cons, the hunting lacked in Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Like I said a few seconds ago, you can gather resources for weapon upgrades and clothes, but as in the actual hunting, I only came across maybe 3 or 4 jaguars in the game. And there's also these hunting perks in here, which never gave me much use. There was this new recipe added to the game where you could gather certain plants and then you could see certain objects or certain animals, which I only used once. I never bothered with it again, as it doesn't really affect much of the gameplay. Plus, most of the jaguars I fought outside of story confrontation, I just used my gun to kill it, which is way easier when it's in my way of a tomb or challenge area. The villain was weak, story and combat-wise. Sure, he's well acted in voice acting, but he shows up and then he's gone for most of the game, then he comes back around with a nice twist, I have to admit, but he just lacked a lot through most of the game, which brings me a lot to the characters having fuzzy faces and fuzzy textures around the game, making me feel like I'm playing any recent Assassin's Creed game. As if certain areas were downgraded and other times, which was most of the time, the mouths were not synced to the dialogue, even including Lara outside of cutscenes. The weapon selection was bland. It's not a very good variety and you could barely use the guns like I said. Very little throughout the game. Shadow felt so much like 3 other distinct games. Assassin's Creed Origins, since the tribes, different languages, that would be repeated over and over while walking through a village, running away from enemies while they're chasing you, and doing side missions, which sometimes felt pointless, just made you feel like you were playing Shadow of the Assassin's Creed. Then Uncharted for obvious reasons. Now yes, Tomb Raider was way before Uncharted, but it's so much alike, even more. Helicopters firing at you and not hitting you once, jumping on ledges and the ledge is, breaking away and you're holding on, while oil tankers are exploding, etc., etc. Those type of action sequences. And then Far Cry Primal, because of the tribes, languages, etc. in certain areas of this game. I would walk around and it would just freeze and say waiting for stream somewhere along those lines, like it needed to load more of the game of the area that I was going to. And last for the cons, the NPCs, the civilians in the game, you walk around and you see them again and again, and there's no variation between the characters. They all look the same. Same bald guy and armored guy that I've killed for the past 10 hours. Same bald guy smoking a cigarette while standing in a convenient area where I can stealth kill him. There's so much to do in this game, a lot of side activities and even more exploring. It can be sometimes overwhelming, but I really enjoyed myself throughout my playthrough, and I'm intrigued to see where Lara Croft goes next, if there is a next time. If you're a fan of the past Tomb Raider games, then you will enjoy this installment. Yes, the gameplay was getting stale during Rise a few years ago, but there are certain elements in here that bring a new flavor to the franchise. There's still some staleness when you're 10 to 13 hours in, but it really depends on your playstyle and pacing in this game. I'm going to give Shadow of the Tomb Raider an 8.3 out of a 10, which equals a B+. Thanks everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment down below, and tell me what you guys think about Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Hit the subscribe button for more future game reviews. Till next time, bye bye.